days events, some information with regards to what's happening in a society level when it comes to the policies for circular economy. I would just like to say to the PG maybe that I can hear myself with a difference of a couple of seconds, so this makes the speech a bit difficult because of the echo. If it's possible, perhaps try to solve this technical issue. I try to start. Maybe I will reduce the volume on my side. And if this is still working for you, then I can start with the first slide. And of course, introduce myself as the chair kindly shared before. I'm working at the European Commission, and I'm working for the Director General for Environment. We are the service within the European Commission that is leading on the circular economy and is contributing with other services as well to the implementation and before the development of the EU Circular Economy Action Plan, as well as the other key milestones within the European Union. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is, as you can notice, representation of the European Green Deal with many different initiatives that are going from climate to mobility to eliminating pollution to the circular economy and so on and so forth, with the idea of having the target of reaching climate neutrality in the EU by 2050. This is the overarching principle. I would say the main, most interesting message that I would like to share today with you via this slide is the fact that on the one hand, indeed, circular economy, you can see here, is a building block of the European Green Deal, and we consider it so. At the same time, when we, at the level of the European Union, work with circular economy, we not only try and strive to implement the action plan, but we also work to mainstream circular economy in basically all the other milestones of the European Union. So, in parallel, there are different strands of work, and one of them, indeed, for example, is what is the potential of circular economy for reaching climate neutrality. Another one might be what is the potential of circular economy and how we can use the tool of circularity to reduce pollution, to, for example, increase sustainability of our food sector, and so on and so forth. So, on one hand, there is a vertical axis of action to implement circular economy. On the other hand, there is a horizontal one to mainstream circularity in basically, and of course, as a target, everything potentially we do in the future. Next slide, please. In the next slide, you will see that there is a slide on the need for action from an environmental perspective. So, a few statistics that are showing, I think in a few words, why the European Union and the European Commission have started to act in the last decade, basically, mostly, but also before, of course, through other means, on circular economy. And it goes through a vision that really tells us that circular economy will have clear benefits for specific aspects of environmental protections. It can go from, for example, from that biodiversity to greenhouse gas emissions, but also it is not included in the slide, and equally important, it's also a recipe for economic growth and sustainable growth. So when it comes to jobs creation, when it comes to business opportunities, when it comes to GDP increase, circular economy is, as we say, a win-win agenda. So on the one hand, protecting the environment, but also on the other hand, strengthening and supporting economic growth. Next slide, please. I think it would be useful for me to share a few words on where are we coming from, and this is something that I was mentioning before when it comes to the first Circular Economy Action Plan. So the action plan that had been adopted in 2015 and had been therefore implemented during the course of the previous commission, the Juncker Commission. And you can see here that we are coming from a very ambitious waste framework for the EU that has indeed enshrined into law several recycling targets, complete recycling targets for member states to achieve in the course of basically the next decade and a half. You can see, you can read here some of the targets that the co-legislators have agreed on, and of course when it comes to the European Union legislative framework, the Commission has the power of initiative, but at the same time it is very important to mention, also in the context of this, of the Waste Framework Directive, the co-legislators, the European Parliament and the representative of the European Union governments, so the Council, do negotiate and agree on each specific target. So together with horizontal targets, including on packaging, but most importantly to recycle at 65% that has been less than 10% of municipal waste by 2035. There are also some sectoral recycling targets, as you can see here, that indeed we will need to continue to work on in order to, of course, support the implementation at the member state level in the next years. Next slide, please. With regards to the next slide, this is indeed the overview of the new, well, the last and the current European Circular Economy Action Plan. 35 actions along the entire life cycle of products. This is not the first action plan, but also another action plan, as I mentioned before, was fully implemented by 2019. And the first one, as well as this one, but this one even more so, have in a way started to mirror circularity and circular economy, the concept, with policy making, in the sense of introducing actions across the entire life cycles of products. You can see here that we have actions to make sustainable products the norm in the EU, to empowering consumers, so sustainable consumption angle of it, but also sustainable production processes, for example, industries and biogas. At the same time, and while, of course, working on reducing waste and supporting modern and efficient waste management, in the right side of the screen, you can also see some priority sectors that we have identified in the EU that are going to receive tailored initiatives and tailored actions that are going, in our idea, to maximize the benefit of circular economy policies in the next few years. You can notice, for example, plastics that might be ringing a bell for you, because indeed the plastic strategy from the European Union was actually adopted in 2018, and we are working to complement and increase the ambition of specific targets, for example, microplastics, for example, a policy framework on bio-based plastics. I can hear. Unfortunately, I can hear what I believe is a translator. I can still hear, and I'm in the audio English.
We can hear you. Are you hearing the translation?
I'm in the English channel, and I can hear the professional that is working now. I can try to mute interpretation. Okay, and I'll continue. So thanks a lot for support there. Before going to the next slide, I would like to pose your attention to the right side of the slide in the gray area. And what I would like to mention here is that together with the horizontal and vertical actions that we have adopted for the action plan, we have also identified some enabling conditions. So policy actions that are going to accelerate the transition, looking at the context in which the circular economy is going to play out. So, for example, we are working to creating a taxonomy for basically private investors to be able to understand more concretely what is and how they can invest, if they wish so, on circular economy. We are working on international actions in the context of several initiatives, including, of course, the United Nations Environment Assembly. But we're also trying to engage in discussions and exchanges with member states and with also local authorities in the European Union to try to understand how we can support them to be the game changer in the circular economy transition. This is also including supporting them to use economic instruments, including environmental taxation, to try to support the circular economy. Next slide, please. In the next slide, you will see, and now I see myself. In the next slide, in this slide, you can find that there are several initiatives we have adopted over the course of 2020 up until 2022. And the first, the most important, I would say, policy package, as rightly mentioned before, has been and is the circular economy package that has been adopted in March 2022, so as recent as 2 months ago. And in the next few slides, I will share with you some details indeed of what we have introduced. Basically, in my opinion, materializing the overview of the action plan and making sure that we achieve one of the main objectives of the action plan. That is not only looking at the waste management angle, very important of course in the context of the Waste Framework Directive, but also at the same time looking at the way we produce and design products to make sure that we reduce waste in the first place, and when products are put into the market are able at the same time to be easily recyclable and can be actually put back into the economy as easily and as fastly and as cost efficiently as possible. So it's a matter of environment, but it's also a matter of cost efficiency. Of course, for example, when it comes to the cost for market actors. And next slide, please. In the next slide, you will see an overview of 4 main initiatives we have adopted just 2 months ago. And the first and most important one that I would like to share with you is the regulation on eco-design for sustainable products. So you can see here the list of relevant initiatives. In the next slides, I will share with you, I think, one of the main messages that I would like to convey to you today with regards to what is, of course, the European Union's recipe for circular economy that we are happy to share with partners. And the idea is that when adopting and developing this action plan, in the next slide, please, basically, we have started the definition with a problem definition, right? So, as you can see here, there are 3 main problems we have identified when creating the action plan. The first problem is that many products in the European Union market break down too quickly. They cannot be easily reused, repaired and recycled, and many are made for single use only. At the same time, consumers, for many different reasons that we have found, are still not repairing enough products, and at the same time they are finding difficult to trust environmental labels, that there are simply too many of them, and some of them are actually misleading. At the same time, there cannot be an efficient circular economy if sustainable processes at the industrial level are not circular per se. And I'm talking, for example, about industrial symbiosis, and I'm talking about the need to make sure that the industrial processes of our industry do not pollute our air, water, and soil. So through these three main problems definitions, we have actually decided to put forward some actions. Next slide, please. A useful recap of what is the overview of product policy in the European Union very quickly. This is an element and an image that is taken forward in 2018 staff working document with the European Commission. So, of course, throughout these years we are going to slightly modify this approach, but it's still true in its fundament, in its basis. So it's useful for me to share it with you. We go through a graph showing the relative sustainability of products from low sustainability to high sustainability, so from red to green. Through eco-design, we introduce in the EU market mandatory minimum requirements that are going to simply cut out from the EU market the least sustainable products. So up until if the sustainability of a certain product is below these sustainability thresholds, they're simply not included and they are not accepted in the EU market. At the same time, there is a wider range of products that can be less or more sustainable, but more sustainable than the minimum requirements to eco-design. And this green part, this yellow part, is specifically for energy related products. So this is important for you to know because it is the previous, it's a previous settings of 2018, but it's important also to understand the reasoning behind it. Through market transformation, so mandatory labeling, we are giving more information, for example, to the consumers to understand the performance of such products. So in such a way that consumers are able to, if they wish so, decide for going to the more sustainable products. And at the same time, on the right side of the screen, you have what we can call the best in class. So those products are not only above the minimum thresholds, not only are super performing, but they are so performing that they can actually be recognized through an EU eco-label. And the EU eco-label is put into the most sustainable products, depending, of course, on the product's category. And consumers, when they find this label, they can be reassured that those products are the top in class when it comes to environmental sustainability. Next slide. Next slide, please. And in the next slide, I will share with you some more information with the main, as I mentioned before, game changer of circular economy policy making, I would say, in the European Union. That is the new regulation on eco-design for sustainable products, announced in the context of the Circular Economy Action Plan in the European Green Deal, at least in terms of its scope, and then adopted just 2 months ago in the context of the Sustainable and Circular Economy Package. The proposal is a proposal of the European Commission. So as I mentioned before, the way the European Union Democratic System report, the European Commission proposed legislation, and then the European Parliament and the Council are going to, of course, negotiate and eventually agree on this initiative. So what I'm going to share with you now is the proposal of the European Commission that can be amended by the representative of the European citizens and the representatives of the European government through the legislative procedures. So the perspective here is that, as I mentioned before, we are introducing minimum mandatory requirements for products to enter the EU, and up until now we had in place another piece of legislation that was basically targeting specifically energy-related products. And when I mean energy-related products, I mean quite literally any products that has an energy component. For example, televisions, for example, fridges, for example, dishwashers. The idea, well, we say the revolutionary idea of this initiative proposal that we had put forward 2 months ago is to expand the scope of this framework to potentially target all products in the EU market, also those that are non-energy related. For example, clothes, for example, furniture. Still, of course, potentially, so this legislative and legal instrument keeps the scope for this in this way, with some exception, for example, food and, for example, medical appliances, of course. At the same time, we are also continuing working on the energy-related products through a work plan that in the next 2 years is going to introduce new requirements to deepen the approach of eco-design for those products. Next slide. It might feel like it's a bit abstract in terms of description. It is indeed, but what I would reassure you is that in the next slide, I think I will be able to provide some more granularity of this of the way this will work. There is still the same approach as before, in the sense that we are proposing a framework legislation. So a framework legislation is a legislation that opens the box for following subsequent implementing acts that are going to basically implement the vision and the acts that are going to be put forward by the previous framework legislation. This will be done so by multi-annual working plans, where basically the Commission is going to, on the one hand, announce where action is going to be made, which product category, and on the other hand, engage with the industry to make sure that indeed we also use the full knowledge of economic actors, but also the civil society to understand how to make this work in practice. So we are going to implement product category by product category, because of course each and every one of those product categories, they might be clothes, they might be furniture, they might be dishwasher, they might be fridges and so forth, have different needs and different characteristics. Next slide, please. At the same time, there are new features that I think are useful to put into context. One of them is, as I mentioned before, the scope extension beyond energy products, so potentially including other, naturally this is our, of course, objective, including other product categories, for example, clothes. But at the same time, there are other initiatives and other features that I find interesting to share with you. One of them, you can read all of them here, is increasing focus on product information. So through this new regulation that we are going to propose, we have proposed to the product sectors, we are also opening the scope to introduce labels on, for example, aspects such as repairability. We are also opening the scope to increase technology and to make full use of technology when it comes to products information. One of these examples is the digital product passport. So the idea really that we can have a digital identity of each product that will allow us to immediately understand better, with less transaction costs, of course, the full set of information on the materials, on the life cycle, on the products of a specific product, of course, while always respecting privacy and sensitive business data. At the same time, there will be a role for green public procurement, especially in the context, of course, of today's economy after and during the COVID pandemic. The full force of green public procurement can help us in supporting circularity. So within this framework regulation, we're also opening the scope for potentially setting mandatory requirements for green public procurement for specific products categories. So really giving the power to the public sector also to drive the transition. Next slide, please. These are some of the principles that we might add to each and every one or some of the new product categories that we are putting forward with these proposals. And you can see here that minimum requirements for specific products might be linked with durability, they might be linked with reusability, they might be linked with minimum recycled content within the products, they might be linked to the possibility of free manufacturing and recycling, or energy use, or other aspects such as environmental impacts, for example, carbon environmental footprint. So these are some of the possible principles that we might introduce depending on the product category that can give you really the idea that circular economy is entering through law on the way we actually have and consume and produce products in the European. Next slide, please. With this slide, I just wanted to mention and to mirror what I was sharing with you before in the context of the overall description of the action plan. That is for each and every one of the actions that we look forward to implement on the circular economy side. There is indeed one environmental benefit, for example, in terms of greenhouse gas reduction that you can do here, but also an economic benefit for consumers when it comes to energy savings, very important of course, but also when it comes to the EU economy as a whole, including for supply chain actor, for example, in terms of reduced material costs, and for example, in terms of new business opportunities and increased competitiveness. Next slide, please. If I understand correctly, consider that I started around 9:15, 9:20, I will, in terms of time frame, I will still put 20 minutes in front of me, and then of course if the organizers would like me to stop before, in order to, in a way, catch up with the rest of the programs, please don't hesitate to do so. When it comes to the next interesting initiative we have put forward within the latest economic package is, without a doubt, the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. I will not indulge much into this slide. This slide is just for you to understand and know that, as I mentioned before, there is a clear reasoning behind choosing textiles as a priority sector in terms of a lack of circularity within the sector at the moment, in terms of environmental impacts and also climate impacts, but also in terms of potential for improve and economic potentials and economic relevance for the European Union economy. So, as I mentioned before, the two sides of the coins that are actually not two sides of the coin, but they can pretty well go together: environmental protection and support and economic growth at the same time. Next slide, please. In the next slide, you will see some of the initiatives that we have announced in the context of the strategy that are targeting the textile sector throughout its entire life cycle of a textile product. So, targeting eco-design, targeting sustainable consumption, targeting waste, including circular materials, and targeting enabling conditions, for example, sustainable consumption and in products information. This strategy is, in a way, in terms of approach, similar, as I mentioned before, to the European strategy for plastics that we had announced in 2018, in the sense that, as in the case of the action on plastics, is targeting all the life cycle of the textiles, products life cycle, and it's also taking the legal form of a communication. A communication from the Commission to the co-legislators, so the Parliament and the Council, is a non-binding legislative and legal act that is nevertheless politically committing and sharing a vision for a specific set of actions that the Commission commits to implement in the next phase. So all these key actions that you can see here are specific, either legal instruments or non-legislative instruments that we are planning to adopt in the next 2 years, basically, within the end of the current von der Leyen Commission mandate. However, the textile strategy is important because it gives a direction. It gives a direction to the market actors, it gives a direction to the legislator, and also it gives us increased transparency and accountability in our own work, because of course it's set in stone what the Commission would like to do in this year. So this is indeed one of the main added values of having, on the one hand, a circular economy action plan, and also sectoral strategies. So it gives a direction to the market actors, for example, businesses, that they know where the economy is going, so that they have time, even before the actions are in place, to start changing their own models and to start contributing in a way in the policy-making exercise, which is indeed, as we always say, a shared transition, including with the consumers and including with civil society. Next slide, please. Another set of key actions, with also including some elements that are linked with the global sustainable value chains. It clearly is important to recognize that the textile sector is a global value chain, and for that matter, we live in a global economy. Therefore, of course, when it comes to supporting circularity in the European Union, we also need to work in partnership with our international colleagues to make sure that we have a common understanding, we should exchange information, we understand the other partners' point of view, and we come up with shared solutions also in the international arena. In the context of the enabling condition, you can see here a focus on research, innovation, and investments. You can see here a focus on circular business models, so supporting business models, for example, in a way targeting and phasing out as much as possible fast fashion, with the nice logo and slogan. Fast fashion is hopefully and will be even more from next year out of fashion. And also other actors and actions that are trying to support, for example, the skills uptake of the workforce of the model, including actions for promoting sustainable textile value chains globally on due diligence and other related Next slide, please. So you can see here that the textile action is announcing new deliverables, it's targeting many different initiatives, and it's also making use of existing and new horizontal legal instruments. So when it comes to supporting eco-design in clothes and textiles, within the framework of this strategy for textiles, in principle and in practice, we also mean using the previous initiative that I showed with you, the one on eco-design for sustainable products regulation, as a way to achieve the vision of the textile strategy. So it's very important from our perspective when it comes to circular economy policy making to connect the dots between the different initiatives. How can each initiative support each other and maximize the benefit? Okay, of course, in order to reduce at the minimum the complexity of what we do in the benefit, not only of the economy, but most important of the benefit of the policymakers at the ground level, for example, local and member state level, that will actually support implementation. In this slide, you can find another directive that we have announced and adopted in the concept of the previous action plan. And it's a directive, a very important one, targeting the sustainable consumption angle of circular economy. Not only circular economy, but the green transition in general. Circular economy is one of the angles. It's amending two different directives, one called the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive, and one is the Consumer Rights Directive. And it's basically aiming to ensure more and better and more reliable information on products at the moment of purchase. So the perspective here is to put the EU consumers in the best position possible, if they wish so, to take sustainable choices, so that they can, with their own decision, support circularity, of course, if they wish so. one of the main interesting part of this directive is introducing or proposing to introduce a requirement to give consumers the right to know how long a product is designed to last and if can it be replaced. So in a way, it gives information at the purchase level to consumers whether a product is circular or not. And of course, this is a matter of informing the consumers. And then on the other side, you have the regulation that I mentioned before on eco-design that is going to actually enforce requirements for specific product categories. So this is more horizontal information, and the ones before is more product-based on requirements for eco-design. Next slide, please. The last slide, when it comes to what we have done so far in the context of the last EU package, is on the revised construction products regulation. I will not focus much on this slide, not for lack of course, importance or lack of interest, but because I probably would like to share more information on other initiatives later on in different slides. But what's important here to share with you is that the revised construction products regulation is important because, for many different reasons, but also because the construction sector is, I would say, one of the most relevant sectors when it comes to the current economic recovery from the pandemic. So, adding new product requirement or suggesting to add new product requirement, I always say suggesting, proposing, because these are the proposals to the co-legislators, so these are not enshrined in the law just yet, will ensure that design and manufacture of construction products is based on the state-of-the-art technologies and information to make these more durable, repairable, recyclable, and easier to remanufacture. So all these approaches towards recyclability, but also usability, but also remanufacturing, are in a way are shared throughout all the different initiatives. So the keywords that you've noticed in the different initiatives, even if they are addressing different sectors, even if they are addressing different actually aspects of the life cycle of products, they are the same because they are the overarching principles that we have managed to announce via the Circular Economy Action Plan that currently we are implementing. Next slide, please. In 2022, still work to do. We have some initiatives that we are currently working on. One of them is still on sustainable consumption, on legislative proposal on substantiating green claims. We will be working also on plastics packaging. Most importantly, well, broadly on packaging waste directive that is targeting actually horizontally the packaging sector. It's in a way a very important piece of review of legislation that is going to increase the circular economy relevance of the current and existing framework on packaging, so as to target additional elements that we want to target within this context. For example, trying to reduce waste, packaging waste at the same place. With the same line of music I was mentioning before, with regards to making sure that we not only increase recycling, but we also reduce waste generation in the first place, so as to increase economic benefits and environmental benefits. Plus, actions on plastics, as I mentioned before, with regards specifically on microplastics and bio-based and biodegradable compostable plastics. Next slide, please. I was focused a lot on, let's say, the highest stages of the waste hierarchy that I mentioned before. So, eco-design, well, they're not properly highest stages, but in a way, high stages of, the waste hierarchy. So I was mentioning eco-design, I was mentioning other aspects related with the part, reuse, and so on and so forth. But of course, the first base for a circular economy remains an efficient and modern modern waste management system. So the way we treat waste in the first place, including and most importantly recycling. So when I mention one specific area of the life cycle of products, for example, design, I don't mean at all that that is the most important point from the others, for example, waste management. Actually, the way we consider circular economy on our side is as an organic cycle. So, in order to achieve less waste, most value, and to improve recycling, we need to look at the way products are designed. But at the same time, if we design products in a circular way, for example, with products that are actually reusable and recyclable, but at the same time, we don't have separate collection, and consumers do not separate collect products, then of course the circular economy per se collapses. So it's like a bridge, and every pylon in the bridge is very important, otherwise the entire bridge becomes very, very unstable. So you can see here very different actions that we are enshrined into law when it comes to waste management. One of them has been already adopted by the Commission, is currently under negotiation through the co-legislator, the Parliament and the Council. And it's the rules to address waste exports, to try to avoid, in a way, of exporting waste problems from the EU to abroad. So this is one of those that we have adopted. You can see also in the upper side of the slide that we have also adopted a revised policy framework for batteries that has been adopted in 2020. And the ones that you can see here, including packaging and most importantly packaging, are currently being developed. Next slide, please. The cross-cutting action that I was mentioning earlier before, we are working on several aspects that are aiming at understanding better the context of circular economy under which we are playing, understanding, for example, the role of the financial markets to support circularity, and trying to empower financial actors to give them the right information if they wish to invest in circular economy. Why? Because circular economy is, in our way, a future-proof investment area that can give really high returns to investors. We are doing so by integrating circular economy in the European Union taxonomy regulation. As you see, they are currently being laid out through 20 acts, including circular economy. We're also working on circular economy solution in state aids, business strategies, financial instruments, and also financial reporting. So it's a very wide strategy that I'm trying to summarize in a few words, but it really gives the idea that when it comes to circular economy policy making, and when it comes to the circular economy transition, the transition is systemic. And therefore, you need to work on circularity angle, vertically, but also on mainstreaming on the other aspects of the policy. Next slide, please. That's a very important, my important slide, I would say. A slide that I would like to share, where I would like to stay at least a few minutes. Within and in the context of the European Green Deal, we have ambitious environmental targets. We are including and trying to laws ambitious targets, regulations, supports for businesses. But at the same time, it is important, we do recognize and we clearly stating that we need the green transition to be fair and just if we want it to be successful. So when modifying and trying to accelerate the transition of the EU economy to the circular economy, but also the climate neutral circular economy, we also need to look at the best way to support, for example, regions, to support local authorities, and to support the workforce to actually make the best of the many different opportunities that are actually starting to pop up. They are starting to populate the economy. So you can see here certain set of initiatives that we have adopted in order to support, for example, the reskilling of workers, to better understand and to put resources into trainings, to put resources into business support, to put resources into regional development, for example, via cohesion funds, but also looking at the urban angle of circular economy, and doing so by directly engaging with the cities, with the local authorities, with the regions, to, on the one hand, hear from them what needs they have to make the transition successful, and at the same time providing guidance in case needed for this transition. So, in the case of the governance of circular economy, if I may say so, this slide is clearly stating that in order for the circular economy to be successful, you need clearly at the European level, that's what we agreed at the Commission and the Parliament and the Council, but also need support and the exchange with the national level, in the case of the European Union, and also at the local and regional level. Why? Because, put it simply, the needs of a specific region, for example, in a coastal areas, might be different compared to the needs and opportunities of a region in urban areas. So we need also understand the granularity and how to fit and tailor circularity to each and every one of those situations. Next slide, please. And this is another slide that I wanted to share with you, of course. That is part of the Circular Economy Action Plan, because the action plan that we adopted in 2020 had a paragraph on international actions. The idea here is simple. The idea is that we will be and we will continue to advance the circular economy through EU legislation and through EU business support and through non-legislative actions in general in the next years to come. But at the same time, in a global economy, we need also to engage, and we want to engage with the international community, and doing so in very different ways, at the multilateral level, at the bilateral level, and also the plurilateral. To all of these initiatives, I would like to maybe single out the one on the left, that is the objectives that we had introduced in the context of the first Recovery Action Plan to kickstart negotiation for a global agreement on plastics. Plastics is typically, plastic pollution is typically a global problem that therefore requires also global solutions. And during the course of UNEA 5.2, just in March 2022, the parties, so the international community has agreed a resolution to start the negotiations for a global agreement and a binding agreement on plastics by 2024. So this is also an idea and a message for you that indeed when it comes to circular economy, also looking at the international angle that is of the utmost importance for its overall implementation. We have also ongoing initiatives in terms of introducing and phasing in circular economy requirements in free trade agreements, or, for example, increasing outreach activity, including bilateral issues to third countries, if found interesting and promising by the third countries when it comes to supporting circular economy. Next slide, please. I'm almost over. Bearing in mind, of course, the time left. Monitoring. I was hearing before, indeed, the previous speaker that was mentioning the importance of monitoring, progress in monitoring circular economy, in the context, of course, of future potential work in Turkey. When it comes to the European Union experience, and this is the reason why it was particularly interesting for us and for me to be here, to share my experiences and our experiences, and eventually for you to understand and see which one of those experiences might be tailored for your own characteristics. We do have experience on monitoring progress. we have in place a so-called monitoring framework for the circular economy. It's a set of indicators that are targeting each and every one of the life cycle stages of the products. This monitoring framework is available online, so you can just Google monitoring framework circular economy European Union, you will find it actually online. And this monitoring framework is providing data on waste, providing data on, for example, circular material use, so the percentage of use of secondary materials within the total economy, information on environmental patents, so eco-innovation, information on specific sectors or aspects, for example, in the context of packaging. And all these indicators are by member states. So it's also a way for not us, most importantly the member states, to understand where the gaps are and what they can do to improve their own circular economy performances. In a consideration that in a context in which, of course, we are talking now about the EU level initiatives, but very importantly, the member states within their own national frameworks are also very active to complement EU level developments through national action plans, through national legislations, and so on and so forth. That, of course, as long as they do not disrupt the internal market, are an important tool to complement and support and accelerate even more what we are doing at the European level. We are also working on announcing new indicators, mostly on resource use. This is also in a link with the research and development on understanding better the circular economy. And we are also in contact with member states in the context of so-called European semesters for the Euro area. There is basically engaging in a discussion with member states to support best practices and provide feedback and providing assessment on economic performances of those countries throughout the year. And circular economy is fully within the scope of the European semester because circular economy can and will also support the economic development. The last slide for me, and thank you very much also for bearing with me. I am aware that I am 2-3 minutes delayed. The last slide will be the next one, please. On stakeholder engagement. I think it was clear from the speech before and from different slides that I shared with you that I would say the approach, the recipe that we are trying to implement in the European Union when it comes to circular economy is one that I would consider inclusive. And when I mean inclusive, it means trying to support and trying to empower stakeholders. They can be, for example, NGOs, they can be civil society, they can be businesses, they can be local authorities, in being part of the transitions. So if you go to the next slide, please, on stakeholder engagement, you will see that we have identified, thank you very much, we have created a platform that is called European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. It is a platform where we have many different practices. We have stakeholders sharing knowledge, strategies, voluntary commitments, and so on and so forth. The idea really is to create a platform of the circular economy community where different actors, they might be from the region, they might be from a business, can meet together and cross-fertilize, let's say. There is the link in this slide, so if you're interested to hear more about, for example, good practices or technologies from European Union companies or from European Union local authorities, including on strategies, there is a lot of information there. And with the next slide, I think I will stop my presentation. You can see here some contacts that you might want to check out if useful for you for more information on the circular economy initiatives, but also broadly on what the Commission and the Director General for the Environment is doing. And I don't have anything left to say, but to say thank you very much for organizing this event and also for inviting me and for listening to that presentation. Thank you.